Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you're someone who really wants to cut through all the noise and get a solid grip on the world efficiently, well, you're in exactly the right place. We all know the 24-hour news cycle can feel, honestly, pretty chaotic. It's just this relentless flood of information coming at us from every single corner of the globe. But today, we're going to organize that chaos. We're going to take the most disparate, fast-moving headlines of the day and break them down into crystal clear, digestible themes. So let's dive right in. Here is our agenda for today. First up, global conflicts and flashpoints. Second, the cruise ship health crisis. Third, U.S. politics and justice. Fourth, media, culture, and society. And finally, science, nature, and environment. All right, Section 1, Global Conflicts and Flashpoints. Right now, we are watching two major geopolitical ceasefires unraveling at the exact same time. Over in the Gulf, U.S.-Iran tensions are just soaring after the U.S. attacked an Iranian-flagged ship, which is obviously putting that very fragile ceasefire in serious jeopardy. And concurrently, over in the Middle East, following 10 devastating minutes of bombing that absolutely shattered local neighborhoods, Israel has actually launched its first airstrike on Beirut's suburbs since the April ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that this strike was specifically targeting a senior Hezbollah commander. Now, this kind of extreme volatility, it heavily impacts rapid policy decisions. Take the Strait of Hormuz, for example. President Trump had just announced a military operation called Project Freedom, which was designed to guide ships safely through the strait amid all these soaring U.S.-Iran tensions. But get this, literally just 50 hours after making that initial announcement, the operation was unexpectedly suspended. So the big question is, what happened in that tiny window? Well, China stepped in. Wang Yi held talks with Iran's foreign minister, who, by the way, is on his very first trip to China since this escalation began, and Beijing is now urgently calling for the strait to be reopened through diplomatic peace talks. And the oil markets reacted almost instantly to this potential de-escalation. We saw prices drop and stock markets start to rise. So while diplomacy is trying its best to cool tensions down in the Gulf, the situation over in Eastern Europe remains deeply severe. Ukraine's President Zelensky reported that Russia has completely spurned a unilateral ceasefire. Instead, Russian forces actually attacked a kindergarten, prompting Kyiv to really weigh its next strategic actions. Meanwhile, the human toll here is just devastating. Civilians in the frontline city of Aleshki are completely cut off. They've been trapped for months without any fresh supplies of food or medicine, facing the incredibly grim choice of either staying in a literal war zone or risking what is tragically being called the road of death. Which actually brings us to a really compelling question about the very nature of modern conflict. What exactly is the future of unmanned warfare? And guys, this isn't just a theoretical sci-fi question anymore. President Zelensky recently announced that a piece of Ukrainian territory was successfully captured using absolutely no human soldiers on the ground. None. It was done using only robots and drones. It brilliantly, and kind of terrifyingly, illustrates just how rapidly the battlefield of the near future is evolving right before our eyes. Just before we close out our global security segment, there's one more significant law enforcement development out of Europe. In a highly targeted operation, German police have conducted these sweeping raids against neo-Nazi criminal youth groups. These searches were massive in scale, spanning locations across 12 different states, mostly focused in the east and south of the country. Moving right along to Section 2, the cruise ship health crisis. Look, whenever a virus breaks out on a ship, there is understandably a whole lot of fear. So let's look at the actual science and define exactly what experts are dealing with here. Passengers have been confirmed to have the Andes strain of the hantavirus. Now, make no mistake, this is a severe virus, but the medical consensus is that this specific strain is rarely passed directly from person to person. Understanding that distinction is absolutely vital to grasping the actual infection risks on board, and it helps mitigate a lot of unnecessary panic. But still, this medical emergency is creating a massive logistical headache at sea. The whole situation started with medical evacuations off the coast of Cape Verde. The Dutch Foreign Ministry actually confirmed that British, German, and Dutch nationals were among those taken off the ship. So following those evacuations, the virus-hit vessel left port and began a 3-day journey toward the Canary Islands. But that wasn't without its own diplomatic drama. Earlier, the president of the Canary Islands explicitly stated he did not want the ship to dock there. And the experience for the passengers trapped on board, it's been deeply unsettling, to say the least. YouTuber Ruhi Chenet actually happened to be on the cruise and has been documenting the whole ordeal. He filmed this incredibly eerie moment on April 12th when the ship's intercom announced the virus was not infectious. But the kicker? That announcement was made right after the first passenger death occurred. Back on land, foreign ministries, including the UK's Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper, are saying they're working urgently to help stranded citizens get home from what she described as a very serious and deeply stressful situation. All right, on to Section 3, U.S. Politics and Justice. Across the United States today, we've got three vastly different events highlighting the domestic landscape. In politics, Vivek Ramaswamy, a staunch ally of Donald Trump, emerged victorious, winning the Republican nomination for Ohio governor in a very closely watched Midwest primary contest. Meanwhile, in the justice system, a devastating verdict was handed down in Texas regarding a truly heartbreaking 2022 case. A former FedEx driver who kidnapped and killed 7-year-old Athena Strand while dropping off a package at her home was sentenced to death. During the proceedings, Athena's uncle told the court that her killing took a piece of every single person who loved her. And in a separate, completely tragic development out of Oklahoma, tragedy struck a lake party near Arcadia Lake. Police report that a mass shooting occurred around 9 p.m. local time, leaving 1 person dead and 22 others injured. Let's shift gears a bit. Section 4, Media, Culture, and Society. It feels entirely appropriate, given that we are literally breaking down the 24-hour news cycle today, to pause and reflect on the man who effectively invented it. Media mogul Ted Turner has passed away at the age of 87. When he launched CNN back in 1980, he completely revolutionized television news. He pioneered that modern, around-the-clock news culture that shapes exactly how you and I consume information today. Now, fashion can often tell a much deeper story, and today we're seeing some remarkable contrasts around the world. At the 2026 Met Gala fundraiser, their theme, Costume Art, explores fashion purely as an embodied expressive art form. Conversely, over in North Korea, fashion is calculated political signaling. Analysts are watching the evolving wardrobe of Kim Joo-ai extremely closely. Her outfits aren't just, style choices. Experts believe she is quite literally dressed for succession, offering one of the clearest signs yet that she is being actively groomed to be North Korea's next leader. And hey, sometimes the news is simply bizarre. In academia, a French professor is currently under investigation and has actually been suspended from his university. His alleged offense? Dreaming up an entirely fake academic prize and then going on to award it to himself. I mean, you have to admit, it's a creative, if ultimately flawed, approach to career advancement. Finally, we have Section 5, Science, Nature, and Environment. So, a recent mega tsunami that struck Alaska was officially recorded as the second largest ever recorded in human history. To put that into perspective, out of all recorded time, it's number 2. And the critical takeaway here is the cause. New research suggests that giant waves of this incredible magnitude are becoming an increasing risk due to rapid glacier melt, which is driven by climate change. And we're seeing the localized impacts of extreme weather events in other places too. Take Bogor in West Java, Indonesia. On May 4th, heavy rainfall caused a local river to completely overflow its banks. The resulting raging torrent had enough destructive force to just completely wipe out a local glamping facility. But nature also offers us these moments of incredible resilience and care. We're going to conclude today's summaries with a deeply touching story out of Kenya. Keepers at a wildlife sanctuary are currently hand-rearing an orphaned baby hippo named Bumpy. This young animal was tragically found clinging to its lifeless mother at a lake, but thanks to some swift human intervention, Bumpy now has a second chance at life. I mean, think about it. We've literally just gone from the geopolitical chessboard of the Middle East to a virus on a cruise ship to historical megatsunamis, all in just a few minutes. So how does it feel to witness the world change so rapidly in a single 24-hour cycle? It is a whole lot to process for sure, but by breaking it down into these structured themes, my hope is that it all feels just a little more understandable. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, stay curious, and I will see you next time.